Do you like sneak peeks? So for context, 5 hours ago at the point that I'm recording this video, there was another episode of the Time to Explain podcast where a ton of stuff was discussed, to the point where I would say this is probably the most sneak peek heavy Time to Explain podcast, giving us insights of updates to come. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have already heard some bigger key elements from this podcast, but I would like to give my 2 cents on some of these things, maybe things that you missed, and go over it as fast as I possibly can, a basic TLDR from the podcast. So first things first that I found really exciting and very reassuring is about hypercharges. I think some of the biggest hangups that people had about hypercharges is the price and the lack of creativity. You push a button and you get a powerful charge up to your character. And you know, the way that they explain it in the podcast makes a lot of sense. You want it to be this like last buzzer beater moment, hypercharge, crazy action-packed situation towards the end of the game, and it would make a lot more sense to have these abilities once there are hypercharges for the majority of brawlers in the game. While at the same time, I think another huge hangup was the price of hypercharges, another net loss for coins, which are already scarce in the Brawl Stars economy as is. And I think they addressed both of these things in very positive light as a player base when we want these things to change. Number one, they actually gave an example of a hypercharge that is coming around the corner where the ability is actually a little bit more interesting. They sneak peeked Rosa's future ability, or something that will be similar to it, and that is when you activate the hypercharge, imagine there's like a slowing effect around the bubble or your shield where like cool roots are coming up from the bottom, where it's not just like bigger super. That's what the hypercharge does. It's going to add another layer of complexity to it, which I feel like we all really wanted from hypercharges. So you know, if more hypercharges are like that in the future, I think it would really come across well with the community and me at least as well. And they ended up addressing the price of hypercharges, not so much so discussing it in its entirety, like they're going to change the price or anything like that, but they did give us that they didn't enjoy the price point of hypercharges. So just knowing some of these things about hypercharges, a newer feature to the game, is really reassuring. It's kind of like they are approaching this or addressing the issues that the majority of the community had, or I should say the more vocal aspect or the more vocal community has over hypercharges. So again, the TLDR of this podcast is going to be things that I think are incredibly hype, and one of which, in my opinion, is when Frank brought up the Chinese version of Brawl Stars. I can't be the only one thinking that there was some really interesting potentials going on here that was brought up between Danny and Frank, where they explained that the Chinese version of Brawl Stars is kind of diverting in how it's being developed here, where they're kind of caught up to Brawl Stars. They rolled out hypercharges as well, but now we're seeing like this branching effect where the Chinese version of Brawl Stars is being developed by a separate team and they're making their own decisions. A great example is that hypercharges cannot be purchased with coins in the Chinese version, but they cost 80 gems each. And I guess it was pretty dang successful. I don't think I would like a version like that for the hypercharges if you're looking at trying to max out your account for like 71 hypercharges at 80 gems a pop. That's a lot of gems hidden behind this paywall, right? But where I think the excitement comes from is how they're going to learn from each other, where they're already discussing some unique skins coming out for the Chinese version of Brawl Stars that the Brawl Stars dev team isn't developing, where if they are crazy popular over there in China, that they would consider adding that to the global version, so our version. A great example of this already can be seen from some things happening in China that is far different from the Brawl Stars version that we know of. A new Spike skin coming their way, and what they discussed in the Brawl Talk, if things pop off, a really hype skin over there could come to Brawl Stars. Taking a look at the translation from that article, because once again a new leak arrives from China that reveals 4 possible new skins for Spike, a server, the Chinese one, that has its own exclusive rules and rewards due to the game limitations. And in that survey, this astronaut Spike skin ended up winning, so it looks like this skin is going to be released in China. So in a perfect world, a cool world, if this skin pops off in China and is a solid fit for the global version, it very well could come to the game. So you never know. If you guys ever see something unique and really exciting on the Chinese end, it could very well make its way into our version, which I found really exciting. Oh, another thing I loved about this, again, we're not talking about everything in the podcast, but the things that are making me incredibly hype. But a huge sneak peek coming soon is they are bringing back 2 game mode slots into the rotation that they previously removed in this last update. Like I said previously in sneak peek videos, this felt like almost like it was a test thing. The Brawl Stars dev team is always testing out game mode rotations, taking things out, putting things in. This was a bigger drastic version of that, right? Removing game slots, but they wanted to test out to see whether or not it would help out matchmaking. They explained that they have consistently added new ways to play Brawl Stars, kind of diluting the quality of matchmaking, whether that's actually matching up with people around your trophy range and the speed of getting into those games when you get a bit higher in trophies. But it looks like with that test, they ended up seeing a improvement to matchmaking, but it wasn't worth the wait behind it. So they're adding those 2 game mode slots back. The way that it's going to look is gem grab will be 24/7 permanent, knockout will be 24/7 permanent, and then hot zone and heist will be in a daily rotation, much like we've seen in past situations. So guys, I feel like that was a big hang up for a lot of people out there. It's coming back, which I thought it was going to be. I'm telling you, dude, this thing was jam-packed with a lot of really awesome sneak peeks, and one of which, another thing that I feel like the community really wanted, and we were nervous that the dev team weren't going to commit to, was the exclusive skin debate. They are not bringing back exclusive skins. They explained in the podcast that, you know, it was pretty dang natural for the community to get scared if they didn't want exclusive skins coming back to the game, because it was like 81-19. 81% of people wanted exclusive skins to come back, so everyone was freaking out, but they didn't feel comfortable to actually implement those skins back to the game. But what they are going to do, and a product of this entire discussion thanks to them listening to the community, is they are going to be adding exclusive skins variants, whether that's a recoloring or a revamp to the already existing skin, maybe making it even cooler. So it accommodates both types of players, where they can get this really cool skin that will kind of resemble that OG exclusive skin, while at the same time keeping that exclusive skin for those people who have it and are more interested in its novelty, the rarity. Oh my gosh, guys, probably the most exciting thing coming from the podcast, or at least it was marketed in the podcast to be the most exciting thing, because it was the only official sneak peek that they were going to give, but they gave way more, was Starr drops and what they have planned for the future for them. One of the bigger sneak peeks, honestly, with this didn't even come out during this sneak peek section, where Frank was explaining a little bit more about his ideas with Starr drops. I think where the conversation was going was centralized around the hypeness around certain drops, where if you get a legendary Starr drop, you want it to feel like it's a legendary, not just opening it up and getting a common pin, which I feel like a lot of people have a problem with in the community around Starr drops. And I think where the conversation ended up going to set up this sneak peek was Frank was discussing maybe something around a Starr drop where you open it up and it's almost formatted like a mega box, where it's got multiple rewards within it, or a variation to Starr drops could be something like that down the line, where there's multiple in it, so it feels a little bit more impactful, where you would get like PowerPoint coins and maybe a pin in there at the end. You never know. But the biggest sneak peek came in the actual sneak peek section, and that is a potential Omega Starr drop. It wasn't actually specifically said an Omega Starr drop, but we can kind of pinpoint the dots here. They ended up saying Omega might be within the name. They don't have it named yet, but Omega might be at the start. So hey, come on, let's fill in the blanks. Omega Starr drops. And it isn't going to be a feature, it seems, that's just going to be regular Starr drops, where we play a certain amount of games and we unlock it just daily logging in. It looks like it's actually going to be tied to this newer version of Club League, which we had discussed in our most recent episode, being somewhat tweaked or removed in a huge way, to the point where Club League and Club Shop are being removed within this next update. So if those aspects are being removed, it is leading me to believe this fun aspect to Club League, where it doesn't feel stale, not crazy repetitive or anything like that, centralized around fun. And if all of these currencies are being removed around Club League, it would make sense that this Omega Starr drop would take its place, while at the same time there was this really interesting piece of verbiage to explain it.
We're working on a new feature. It's more social oriented and kind of a group goal to kind of fill up this thing. I don't want to say what the thing is.
And actually, because you said already in the roadmap that we are working on club improvements.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it's already.
Yeah. Oh,
already
okay.
know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we wanted to kind of like think about that from the ground up. Like, what is a fun, like easy to understand group activity that's also a lot of fun, that hopefully doesn't become a chore, and the reward for it, it's this really awesome animal container.
I know.
I know.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and then, it'll get filled with resources and some star drops in it, and when you open that, it'll be a stack of star drops. So
based off that, it's leading me to believe that Club League is going to be like a collective effort, in a sense, to this fun end goal, where the Omega Star Drop will be that main goal, where you have to charge up a bar, unlock it, and then at the end of the season or whatever is in place, you're able to unlock this Star Drop. I think probably exclusive to each account. And now that I'm listening to it back, editor-wise here, the animal container, whatever that comment was about, it's leading me to believe it's like going to be an aesthetic like a crane game of some sort. I have no idea what they're going off with that animal container. Be sure to let me know what you guys have to think about that. It's really, really interesting. It definitely wouldn't feel as restrictive. You gotta do this for your PowerPoints, for your club coins to turn into PowerPoints. It would be this like fun reward at the end. You don't know what you're gonna get, and it seems like it's gonna be a little bit more simpler, right? You just play games, fill up this bar, and that's the club activity. Sounds freaking hype. Omega Star Drop sounds insane, and the way that they're also explaining other variants of Star Drops doesn't just have to be Omega. We might see like Mega Star Drops in the future, or even other interesting elements or pivots. This is definitely not something on their minds right now, but they ended up bringing it up just for like fun food for thought towards the end, where there was an idea brought forth asking the dev team if they've considered being able to select resources from Star Drops. So you open up a Star Drop, 3 different rewards pop up, and you're able to select from those 3 that are given to you. And that didn't sound great to them at face value. They're basically answering these on the fly here. But Frank then brought forth the idea of maybe adding a variant of Star Drop that was kind of similar or along the same lines as the lightning chests within Clash Royale. So it's not so much so that that's going to come to the game, but I found it really intriguing that that's something that they would consider, or maybe even think of different versions of Star Drops, kind of like our old Brawl boxes, big Brawl boxes, mega Brawl boxes. Maybe there will be different kinds of Star Drops that we might be able to get in the future some ways. And then before we move along from the Star Drops, other things that we need to take note of is there aren't going to be stacking of Star Drops. It's something that a lot of people have been asking about them, though they are not going to be adding those to the game, as well as on top of that, ending on a good note, there's going to be more coins in Star Drops moving forward. There's going to be much more weight in coins when compared to power points in Star Drops, seeing that the economy is shifting in coin needs here recently. But straying away from Star Drops, I guess kind of piggybacking off of that point, they ended up deciding to remove PowerPoint cap here in the game, which is extremely, extremely exciting. I feel like it was just another restrictor that was completely unnecessary. I know there's some people, much like Kairos, I think he had mentioned in his most recent video here today that he utilized that in order to progress his account, his free-to-play account, a bit easier, where coins, he could kind of manipulate it where he can get PowerPoint rollover for coins, but there's such a small population of people who end up doing that, where the actual cap is just so restrictive for the majority, which it seems like throughout the entirety of this podcast, most of the way they discuss is these changes. I feel like a lot of the time we look at it in our own shoes, where we're at currently in the game. Like me as a maxed out player, some of these changes seem like really weird, but that's because they're focused on the entire community, which is something that I feel like we don't necessarily do a whole lot. Take ourselves outside of our shoes and looking at like a different person playing this game. It's hard to do that, which I think we should try to do a little bit more often when like seeing some of these newer changes coming to the game. But as we're getting kind of closer and closer to the end, another really exciting aspect that they ended up discussing was PvE game modes. It's definitely not going to be something that's coming out relatively soon. They even mentioned it at a scale of like in a year or two, possibly. It's just not on the forefront because they actually have a pretty dang good idea for a PvE game mode, but they want to make sure to give it proper love around it. Seeing that Brawl Stars is a PvP game mode, they know that, and they're focused focusing most of their efforts into PvP. That's just the game mode, where PvE is something exciting and has been successful in the past, but they're constantly questioning, do we want to focus on PvP or PvE here moving forward into the future? And it even came up, would it be kind of a damper on Brawl Stars if, for example, something exciting PvE came out? Would it take away from the PvP experience? Would people start viewing Brawl Stars as a PvE game mode rather than a PvP, which was interesting. But knowing that there's something on the back burner that is really, really intriguing and it's going to take some time to develop until the point where it's really, really good, I find really compelling. Knowing that there's just something out there, maybe something at the caliber of when like Robo Rumble and Boss Fight first came out. Those were the creme de la creme. Everyone was raving about it every weekend, wanting to play those game modes, but of course it has been like that for some time. And then the final thing I found incredibly interesting that I'm really looking forward to, and I hope they nail it, is some changes to Power League. This has been an ongoing discussion, seeing that the entry to Power League for casual players is really, really difficult. Just overall, a fast-paced game mode or a fast-paced game, much like Brawl Stars, Power League is pretty much so the complete opposite, where you need to be knowledgeable about drafts. The fun entry level takes a long time to get into, right? You got to go through all this draft madness and then sit through like 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay in order to finish that mode. It's kind of the exact opposite of what Brawl Stars is. But what I ended up seeing that I really found compelling, what they want to do with Power League, is to make the actual rewards for playing the game mode much more impactful. They're talking about bringing progression into the game mode, rewarding casual players to actually try out the game mode, as well as the thing that I found the most compelling was some more flex-worthy things, and they made sure to reiterate some flex-worthy things are coming to Power League for people who grind up there. A reward for someone who actually gets high up and puts in time to make it to a certain rank. Flex-worthy things are coming their way. I think they said it 3 separate times, and like made sure to make sure we know. So that sounds incredibly fun. It kind of keeps going back to that whole premise that we've been discussing for years when it comes to like maxed out players and stuff. We are the minority here playing Brawl Stars, but I feel like one thing we've always asked for is like flex-worthy things. When you're maxed out, the most compelling thing is devoting your time to something and getting a significant object showing that you put in time to get there, like masteries, but maybe in a different way, like a pin or a skin. Getting to masters, getting something to show that you've gotten there, or maybe #1 on the masters leaderboard, who knows, stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much so some of the most interesting things that I took away from the podcast itself. I just didn't want to go bar for bar and spit back everything that they said, you know what I mean? I wanted to be like more like my thoughts and my general impressions of the podcast and what excited me, at least. Got a lot of really, really interesting stuff coming around the corner and coming up quick. It seems like a lot of these club league changes with the like Omega Star drop and stuff like that will be coming out in this next update. So make sure to stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be really, really exciting and a nice change to the monotony of club league. But yeah, of course, be sure to let me know what you guys are thinking. It seems like there's going to be a lot of awesome stuff to look forward to here in Brawl Stars in the future, and I'm here for it. But if you enjoyed it, make sure to slap a like on it. Really appreciate that. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Keep having fun with Brawl Stars, and we'll see you in the next one. Adios and take care.